Hello.
Hi, Tyler.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, perfect.
How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm just I'm usually not a morning person, but I joined a group ride this morning with a bunch of older guys at 5:45 a.m. So I've been out and I've already back from breakfast. I think I'll head back to bed after this.
Nice. You sort of front-loaded the day then.
Yeah, that's not typically my style, especially being in this quarantine. And I'm not a morning person, so I tend to delay it till like right before sunset.
Has quarantine in some ways been quite good from that point of view then, being able to slightly indulge yourself to your own schedule?
I think yes and no. I think a few days a week would be okay, but I like having a group and a coach around to keep me accountable. Just because I'll always do the training, but I just ended up pushing it back just because I'm not a morning person. Yeah, I got in the pool for the first time in 3 months, 3 months yesterday.
Wow.
So I'm out of shape in the water, but at least now I have some time to get back in shape.
How did it feel? Were you like somewhat shocked by where you were, pleasantly surprised, or?
I was kind of right in the middle. I was like, because I was kind of thinking this is either going to be really, really bad or I'm going to be like really pleasantly surprised. And then I was kind of like, it was like kind of not great and not terrible. So I was like, I'll take that. You know, I don't need to win medals in my first swim back, but I did like a 50-meter sprint at the end of it just to like kind of see where I'm at. It wasn't written in the program, but I finished and I was like thinking in my head like this is the time, and I was nowhere close to it. But
right.
It is what it is.
What sort of duration was the session then for the first time back in?
It was like 3K, but so not super long, but definitely a bit tiring. I've done a lot of swim bands and tying myself up in my backyard a few times, but it's just not the same as real swimming. So obviously I kept like the muscle mass in that area, but obviously the actual feeling of the water and the energy cardio system, I was breathing a lot harder. You forget how to breathe underwater properly, all those little things.
Were you like, did you feel genuinely like excited about the prospect the day before?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of swimming in general in the pool. I love open water. I love racing, like in swimming and triathlon. But training in the pool is just very monotonous. You swim on a black line, you stare at it, go back and forth for an hour or two most days. So for me to look forward to swimming, I never thought I'd see the day or hear the day when I was like, wow, I kind of had a pep in my step and walk into the gym to go swim, and I was like, man, this hasn't happened since ever.
Brilliant. So whereabouts are you at the moment? Where is it? The same place that you've been for the last few months?
Yeah, I was in Portugal, and then I'm in Winnipeg now. So this is like where my parents live. It's in the middle of Canada, and I'm here until further notice. I might head out west in Canada because that's kind of where the national training center is. But there's no point in me rushing out until I know that racing's going to happen for sure.
Is it kind of, are you still in the same area where you grew up?
Yeah, so I'm just outside the city of Winnipeg. It's called Oak Bluff, but my parents built a house 25 years ago, or 26 now, when I was being born. And they've lived in that house my whole life. And this is where I grew up and played hockey and then started everything here. And then I think I counted, it was 7 years since I spent this much time at home, which is pretty wild. And yeah, 7 years since I've been in one place without taking an airplane this long, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, well, and they must be loving having you there, right?
Yeah, they love having me around, but I'm used to being on my own, so it's weird for me to like try to go back into like living in with other people's routine and stuff when you're so used to living on your own or in your own world. It's hard to function back in normal life sometimes.
Probably magnified when it's your parents.
Yeah, of course. Well, I started traveling when I was like 19, so they still treat me like a 19-year-old when I come home. My dad is like, we have an amazing backyard, amazing house. My dad is constantly working on it whenever he's not working, which this year he's not working right now because of everything. He's in sports. Like my dad's a cameraman.
Hmm.
and so all that's canceled. So he's built a pool house in the backyard and all this stuff. So it's been good.
And so is that where you would normally go back to in close season anyway, though?
No, so typically I'm in Victoria, BC, during the summer. But last summer I did the first summer in years and years and years. I came here and spent a month here with three other athletes who actually just came and stayed in my house, and we did a training camp. One stayed at my next door neighbor, who's my best friend. We did a month here, and it was awesome. I think we all have fond memories of it still.
Amazing. And to be able to show them like the routes that presumably, yeah, you cut your teeth on as a kid.
Yeah, it's fun to, I think, anytime you're anywhere, just to like show someone, or show off your city. Whether it's in this case it was training, but also two of them are Australian, and they never had, I don't know if you've had, but hot mini donuts. You get them at like sporting events.
Right. No.
You've never had them?
No.
Oh my gosh, they're amazing. They're like, yeah, hot mini donuts, and they come in like packs of 12, and they're basically brown sugar and cinnamon, and they're probably slowly kill you, but they are amazing. So it was like little things like that.
Were they athletes from the kind of elite circuit or from just a different setup?
Yeah, so Ben Shaw, who's grew up in Australia, but he's Irish, races for Ireland. Cassie Shaw is Australian, and then the Canadian guy who was in the national team last year named Alexander Hinton.
Oh, cool.
So all great athletes and just good dudes.
And all was that under the watch of a coach, or you kind of guys just setting your own stuff and kind of egging?
Yeah, so I'm coached by John O'Hall, who's the national team coach for Canada, but he was giving us program online and directing at that, and then we were just working within what we had here. So we had a little bit of help and support while we were here, but the general program was from a coach, and then we kind of just built it out. And again, like, we didn't have to wake up and do a session exactly at 8. We could make it at 9 a.m., which was kind of nice as well.
Totally.
I grew up playing a lot of winter sports, but come summer or spring, I remember I'd probably spend 10 or 11 hours a day outside during the summer as a kid. And my parents would a lot of times have to go looking for me, and I wouldn't eat. I would just go out with my friends and, bring one little water bottle, and they'd see me 10 hours later. So inadvertently, I think that's something like you look at it now and go, wow, that's, maybe that's when I kind of fell in love with being outside all the time and being outdoors. Maybe not necessarily directly sport related, but definitely has a relation.
Yeah. So yeah, looking back to like March, how did your close season go? Where had you been sort of in kind of January, February, and then how did you end up in Portugal?
Well, it was kind of a whirlwind of events. So we trained in Phoenix most of the time, and we were training there over the winter. November, December, January, and we were planning on going to Cape Town actually. So we were going to train in Stellenbosch, but that race unfortunately got canceled. So we said, okay, well, where's nice? And we ended up in Portugal in a lovely spot called Quinta do Lago. Definitely will be returning there. It was awesome. People were super friendly and great trails. All the stuff you want, and good food, which is important for me as well. But yeah, I did about a month there, and then was planning on racing Abu Dhabi. Obviously, that got canceled, and I was about an hour and a half drive from European Duathlon Championships in Huelva, which was just by chance. So I said, well, might as well race. So I signed up for that and drove over to that, and that was a blast. I've never really done an elite duathlon, or never successfully, at least. My last one didn't go so well, so that was really nice to mix it up with the new crowd. I mean, you had some people like Ali Brownlee there that obviously were triathlon mainstream, but a lot of them were just duathlon specialists. So that was a lot of fun. There was some fast running going on there, and it ended up being won by a French guy, and Ali was fourth and a French guy third. But the French guy who won is actually quite a renowned runner. He's run almost, I think, 2:10 for the marathon, so can pretty much make the Olympic team for France in running alone. So yeah, he got me at the line, and unfortunate, but maybe I would have found a bit more edge if it was more on the line for me. But obviously, being European Championships, I could not stand on a podium no matter what place I came. So I can still get like duathlon points, but not necessarily like, place any medals, which for me, it wasn't really a big deal. I just wanted to race and have fun. So that was the main thing, and get some friendly competition. We waited so long, and I'm one of the fortunate ones that there was kind of that race in Maluba that went on, and I at least got to do one. So pretty happy that I got one off, and sure I was in some good form. But yeah, definitely after that, things changed.
Yeah. So did you get the feeling that duathlon was probably going to be like your last race for a good while? What was
To be
this?
honest, no, I didn't. I didn't really think. I thought, this could be a little bit of a blip, and obviously none of us knew how serious it was going to be. I was still on the start list for Sarasota World Cup, so I think I was supposed to fly like on the Friday, and on the Wednesday, I found out everything was getting canceled, so I had to book all my flights, try to get back to Canada. I remember driving to pick up a rental car where I was, and I was on the phone to do this and do that. It was a hectic 24 hours to try to get home. Yeah, then I spent 14 days completely isolated in my basement at home.
Yeah.
Uh, it was a rule of Canada, came from Europe. You had to, so I had no talking to people, no visiting. I got food dropped to the top of the stairs. It was a pretty wild time in my life. Obviously I got picked up by my parents and just I was in the back there in the front, and then basically went straight down to the basement and didn't see them for 14 days.
Did you know a few days in advance that that was going to happen, or was that all part of this?
No, nothing. I was literally flying home, trying to figure out what I was doing. I remember people were sitting beside me on the flight, and they were from the UK, and they were flying to West Coast Canada to go on a holiday. And I'm thinking in my head, I don't know what you're what you got on this airplane, but I'm sure they got stuck in Canada for a while.
Like literally, how did you cope with being in the basement? Was it? Did you manage like psychologically? Was it okay?
Yeah, I mean, as okay as it's going to be. I think that any athlete you speak to, it's not an easy time. But obviously, there's two types of reactions. You can bury yourself into training, which I've seen some athletes do, and there's some athletes who went the opposite way and just kind of stop training.
Hmm.
I was probably somewhere in the middle, more even keeled. I kind of knew racing wasn't around the corner, but knew this is my job. I've got to stay in shape and stay on track, and so I kind of just kept ticking along. And um, you know that's kind of my mentality now. Is obviously I'm building up a bit more for this end of the season if it does happen, but there's no point in me being in flying fitness in April if there's no racing. Just a high risk of injury as I see it, because we didn't have any massage, any physio, anything like that. So um, staying healthy was one of the hardest parts, I think, for any athlete.
So your return to living at home for a few months started with your parents having to deliver you food to the top of the stairs as you lived in the basement. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, first time being home for this long in 7 or 8 years, and I don't even get to see them for the first 2 weeks. But I'm sure they've had enough of me now, and they're probably ready to get rid of me.
Presumably, like the Team Canada people must have been like very concerned, and were they in touch a lot and keeping tabs and giving you kind of all the support you needed as well?
Yeah, totally. I think they did a really good job. Triathlon Canada in general did a really good job at setting up, sprint calls and doing swim cords and all the things to kind of keep a routine as an athlete or as a person. I think routine and habit is such a big thing for us, and if you fall out of it, it's easy to get unmotivated or slack a little bit for me. So I think they did a good job of trying to keep routine and keep some normalcy to this wild world we live in.
Hmm. Do you think like either through the slightly like well either through the psychological kind of challenges of being stuck in quarantine or the subsequent returning to training, is there anything that you have started to introduce or found out about yourself or that you think you can then use going forward? Like have you taken any positives that you'll be able to bring into your racing, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the answer everyone wants to say, but I've honestly, yeah, I mean, I've kind of known a little bit in the past, but I think what I've noticed is my ability to switch on and off as an athlete. I think some athletes are always on, and some athletes struggle to get on, and I think that I've learned in this time that that's maybe one of my strengths is being able to turn on and off the switch. And by what I mean by that is being able to, if you're carrying to every session every day is triathlon and super high intensity and you're really zoned in, it's just, for me, it's not sustainable. So that doesn't mean I'm not doing all the training and working hard. It's just being able to unplug a little bit. And I think I did an okay job at it in this period, which is for me has been important for mental health and physical health and everything.
And at the end of last season, which had obviously been such a big one, did it take more out of you, or did it kind of leave you more fired up to want to start the next one even quicker?
Yeah, so I finished my season. I did Banyolas World Cup, which the week after Lausanne.
Mm.
Had an okay race there, and then I actually took some a little bit of time off. I spent some time in Girona, Spain, and just basically ate and drank my way through the coffee shops there, and kind of recharged. And then I ended up racing Super League at the end of the year, which was I wasn't in flying fitness for obviously because I had taken a bit of a break, but I didn't. I think I started this year after my off season. Um, a bit hungrier than I have in previous years, and I think it's because I did take a break after my last World Triathlon race, which I typically just continue on all the way to after Super Leagues. So I think starting this year, I was super motivated. I headed a bit earlier to Phoenix than I normally do, just because it being an Olympic year, I wanted to be just completely zoned in and focused, and it ended up working quite well. Like I was in good shape for the time of the year without doing too much specific stuff. So I'll probably try to follow a similar plan if it's at all possible. This fall leading into next year.
And that little time in Banyolas then must be incredibly satisfying to get to the end of a season and not have any, like, I don't know whether it's regrets or whatever about a season that.
Yeah, I mean it's really hard. I think as an athlete to go. We all need to do it, but at the end of the year, if you haven't had a great year or you're not happy with how it has, and physically have to take a rest, but you don't really mentally want to because you're not satisfied and you still want to keep grinding, as they say. But I think when you've had a good year, you can sit back and actually you don't lose the fire, but go, okay, I deserve this break, and it's going to make me better to take a little bit of time off. And maybe I had a bit more of that this year, a bit more relaxed, in the off season where I didn't have that same urgency. But again, when I flip the switch, it's on and off. So when I'm off, it's really off. And when I went down to Phoenix, then I was, back in the zone. I was ticking away training and really, focusing on what I was doing.
The perfect season is impossible, right? So if you're chasing that, you're inevitably going to be disappointed. Have you tended to finish seasons in feeling like, very content with where you are?
Yeah, I think 2017 is an exception to that. I didn't have a great year 2017. Just a few things off, and I'm not sure if you knew, but I basically had a femoral stress reaction in my femoral neck after the Olympics. So I almost didn't run for 6 months. So then obviously going into 2017, that was highly affected because I just couldn't train for 6 months properly. And I think that's the only year that I kind of finished, and I was pretty disappointed. But I think then 2018 I came out firing, and for me, one of the things I've also learned through this and injuries or whatever is that usually I have my best races and my best years after tough times. It lights that fire back in my belly. I think as athletes, when you've been in the sport for 10 years, the fire in your belly will always be there, but it obviously burns higher at some points and lower at some. So sometimes, the setbacks, make the fire burn a bit more.
And as far as experiences go in your career so far, how was Rio 2016?
Yeah, I mean, I was a kid in a candy shop. I was just so happy to be there. I remember starting the year and there was 3 WTS races before the end of qualifying, and I had to come top 12 in all 3 races. And for me at the time, that was pretty challenging. I came 10th, 11th, 10th. So when I got selected for the games, it was obviously I trained hard and was really focused, but I was kind of the mentality that like I had already overreached my expectations by going to the games. And yeah, that's it. I was training really hard, and that's how I ended up injuring myself for the Olympics. But yeah, like kid in the candy shop mentality. Like I remember walking through the Olympic Village and just staring at athletes from other sports or whatever that I grew up watching. Like I remember walking to the cafeteria and seeing Usain Bolt on his balcony with a few of his buddies, just bumping some music and dancing along, and it's things like that that you remember outside of the race. every sport is very obviously unique, and how you get to the top is very unique. And that's kind of one of the things that I've liked. I did this fall. We did a bonding Canadian team Olympic for all the sports, and it's just interesting to hear the different stories and how different sports work, because you really don't know how the inside of other sports work. You just see them from the outside. So it's pretty interesting to see the journeys of everyone from your country or other countries and all the different sports.
You also obviously had the Canadian Hall of Fame with Simon Whitfield, right? Was it you presenting him with that trophy? And
Yeah, that was wonderful. I got reached out like a few weeks before, and they said, "Hey, we've got Hall of Fame dinner. We're inducting Simon Whitfield into the Canadian Olympic Hall of Fame. So not just triathlon, but all sport. Are you around?" And I was like, "Oh, that's like 36 hours after my last race." And I was like, "I'm coming from Malta." So I flew right from Malta into Toronto, and it was obviously dress apparel and didn't have a suit. So I went out that I arrived late that night, went out the next morning, bought a suit, and presented him with his award that afternoon. And it was a pretty special moment because Simon didn't know I was coming. He thought it was just going to be, as a politician or someone who worked for Triathlon Canada. So it was pretty special to share that moment with him. I know he was a big inspiration in me getting into the sport. And even growing up as a junior, he was always that guy who was willing to help, or if you had questions, at the time it was Twitter, but you could, message him on Twitter, and he was always one to help. So pretty special to share that moment with him. Here's a good example. I was racing junior nationals, and it was senior national championships. And I think the day before we're doing swim recon, he was the type of guy that I was so starstruck. I remember getting out of the water and going to talk to my coach, and I was just so excited that I was swimming within like 20 meters of Simon Whitfield. It was just like such a cool thing. And he was just this, character that I knew that way. And then as I, started to come up through the ranks as a junior, he kind of always would reach out and say, if you ever need anything or you ever have questions, just let me know. And that's pretty cool. I think it's when you get to the higher level in sports, it's nice to hear or see athletes who give back through younger generations, whether it's from your country or not. It's pretty special when someone can do that and help out an upcoming generation, knowing that they're going to take their place or overtake them eventually.
it was Montreal where you got third, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And that was your first WTS podium.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I got on the World Cup podium the year before for the first time, and then that was pretty cool.
It's just kind of interesting to compare the emotion there, and obviously it was at home as well, so that must have added to it. But then compare that to winning in Tokyo and the kind of fist punch of the tape. Does that represent like a slight difference in your having achieved that first podium in WTS, and then like the Tokyo was like a very different reaction?
Oh, it was definitely the whole package as you speak about. I mean, a WTS podium was one of my goals as an athlete growing up, was to stand on one of the biggest podiums in triathlon. And to do it at home was pretty surreal. But I think what made it pretty emotional was I was hurting so much in that race, and it was probably one of the deepest I've ever dug. And every time I was about to get dropped, I'd hear a "Go Tyler" or see someone I knew, and just found every ounce of energy I had. So when you do that and you get the most of yourself, and it's a result that you're happy with, in front of a home crowd, emotions overtake you, and like none of that is planned. Versus what you speak about in Tokyo was maybe a different reaction. Tokyo, I went in with just this laser focus and this exact process of what I wanted to do. And I think Tokyo was almost like a bit of a shock, because it was all of a sudden I was, sprinting, I was leading down the carpet, and I didn't even realize what had happened at the time. Versus Montreal, I'd suffered through every single moment, and the race felt like ever. So when I finally got to the finish line, there was a bit more emotion. Versus Tokyo was kind of a blur. It just snapped by pretty quickly. Tokyo and Montreal were special because I don't normally say, but like there's not a lot of feedback in training. I do training, and racing's not one in training. But I remember specifically before Montreal and before Tokyo, a few weeks before both events, I remember talking to my coach and saying, these races are going to be good. And I don't say it that often because obviously I go in optimistic to every race that I can do well, but there's something about both those races that I just strongly believe for some reason before the race, whether it was just my confidence or however I was, going about it. It was those two races all year were the ones that I said beforehand was, yeah, something special is going to happen this weekend. And sure enough, they did. So that shows you how powerful when you convince yourself if something's going to happen, that it can happen.
Yeah.
Tokyo definitely suits me. It's really, really hot. I'm a small guy. I do well in the heat. Don't do well in the cold, unfortunately. But that's, that plays to my strength. And that's kind of looking at it from a few years ago to now. That was, one of the big positives of Tokyo is how hot it is. It makes it a really tough race, and it changed the dynamic. If you speak to anyone, changed the dynamic of a race, which is kind of why this year I raced the Tokyo World Cup instead of Leeds. It was on the same weekend because I felt like, well, if I can race in Tokyo, which is even hotter, I can race Tokyo. So I think going out and doing the Tokyo and proving to myself in the back of my mind, which I already thought about, was that I could do well in the heat. Gives you an extra confidence to yourself.
Do you feel part of a new wave of triathlon, and do you think the sport is ready for some new personalities and some names writing themselves into history?
Yeah, I mean, this year was interesting. How many different podiums and winners we had on the male side. I think that's the first time in years and years and years that we've seen such variety. And I think it's just about how high the level is now and how deep it is that, if you're off a percent, you see the same guy that won a WTS the next weekend come 10th or 15th because he's just off that little percentage. And that's how high the level is now.
Yeah.
I mean, the up and coming, these guys I've raced since I was 16, 17. I remember losing a sprint to Yella in 2011 Beijing Junior Worlds. He was 18th, I was 19th.
Right.
And Christian Blumenfeld was 14th. So, that was, 10 seconds separated us, 9 years ago now, and we're still racing each other. So it's definitely, it didn't happen overnight, that's for sure.
Well, thanks, man. That's been great.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good day.
Thanks a lot.
What's left of it.
Yeah, you too. Cheers.
Bye.